Everybody, this is herculespetix, founder, curator, docent, and gift shop employee of the herculespetix Academy of Comic Book Studies. Today, we're going to be looking at Cocaine Comics number 1 and number 2. Two really nice undergrounds this one's from 1975 and this one's from 1980. Cocaine Comics actually had 4 issues. I don't own 3 and 4. I usually like to make a video with all the issues, a complete run, but it gets to the point, guys. I'm 57. I probably might die and never buy number 3 and number 4. Never get to buy them. So I'm just like, I want to show these off, and I'm not going to wait who knows how long to show off these Cocaine Comics. Hopefully I will get number 3 and number 4 one day. They look pretty good. I looked them up on Comics Joint, and they look just as entertaining as these. These are definitely fun comics, pretty nice undergrounds. And let's start with the first one. So here we have number 1. And what a way to start off. Beautiful William Stout cover, as all of his covers are. I love this cover too. It's just all of these crazy weirdos on the street, all beautifully drawn. But then on top of that, I love this concept. I don't know if you guys can tell, but this is the main character of the comic. Wildroot is his name. And he says, "Let me out of Hollywood. Let me out of this comic book." And he's ripping through the cover, from the black and white innards of this comic. I just think that's so clever and cool. It's just a fun idea. So this is edited by George DiCaprio, who edited a bunch of undergrounds. And it's copyright George DiCaprio and Rich Chidlaw, because they do the bulk of the art in this. And it was their comic, basically. But there's other artists in here. Of course, the cover is by William Stout. But it's basically their dealio. Here's Rich Chidlaw. Just a little gag. Of course, most of these comics are about cocaine. And so it's almost like the Freak Brothers for cocaine, except there's less of them. So we start off the first story. A year passes like nothing when you spend spring on the floor, part 1. Story by George DiCaprio, art by Chidlaw. And it's kind of interesting. Rich Chidlaw, he's got this kind of unique, cool style. It's kind of neat. I kind of like it. And but I've never seen him anywhere else. Of course, it's not to say that I have. But I just can't remember him being in any other underground anthology or anything else. But he's all over this one, and he seems kind of like, like a professional. Just the fact that this story is like, I think, 20 pages. That's kind of rare for an underground, such a, extended work. So Wildroot, our main character, he arrives in Hollywood. The first thing he does is go inside this adult bookstore. And, of course, the guy who works there is this total, cranky old man chomping on a cigar. Kind of a ball buster. But Wildroot's thrilled. I don't know if you youngins can remember, you don't know about this, but there was a time when seeing pornography was very hard. It was difficult. I shouldn't have said hard, but it was difficult. I mean, you whippersnappers, all you got to do is press a button on your phone and a world of porn opens to you. But back in the 70s and 80s and 90s, you'd have to go to these creepy stores. They were always pretty, a little scary. So the guy who works there starts, doing the typical line, "This ain't no library," and kind of kicks him out. Wildroot leaves in a huff. He goes to this restaurant to eat some lunch, and he's looking through the want ads, and he sees a want ad for a young artist needed to draw my left-handed fantasies. And this comic is just so underground in the way it's written, where sure, there's an overall plot, but it's also just meanders and, just spend a page on a gag. You know what I mean? It's just like throwing shit in, probably due to the use of cocaine and other drugs on the writer's part. So he calls up this number, and it's this woman being fucked by a dog. And she's like, "Oh, no, actually, you got to call this other number." And so he does, and it's Divino, which is this parody of Divine. the great actor who unfortunately has passed. And Divine basically says, I'm sorry, Divino says, it sounds like you're our man. Sounds like you got the experience. Come up to my mansion and bring your portfolio. So all of a sudden, Wildroot's like, oh my God, I got to pee so bad. And he runs in the bathroom. And there's a guy in a stall eating a pizza. And this weird looking guy looks like a pig man. And he like tells him about some kind of like business thing he's got going where he owns the crypt next to Marilyn Monroe's at the Hollywood Cemetery. And he's like, hey, if you can help me move this thing, I'll give you 10% of $20,000. And so Wildroot takes his card and he's like, yeah, maybe I can sell that at the party tonight at Davino's. End of part 1. So now we have part 2, House of Divino. So he makes it up to the Hollywood Hills, finds Divino's mansion. It looks like something out of a, Frankenstein movie. I didn't even notice this, the poodles, statues guarding the front door. So as soon as he gets there, they open the door. He realizes it's this crazy hedonistic sex party. Just all these freaks just doing drugs and he has all their chatter. Very timely stuff, 70s concerns. A lot of this banter, I don't even understand some of this humor. It's just like, oh yeah, that's probably something back from, I was only like 8 years old when this came out. So he meets Divino. Divino's very cordial, offers him all these drugs, and Wildroot totally takes advantage, snorts up a whole tray of various and sundry drugs, and he kind of passes out in a stupor. And then Divino tells him basically what's going on. Divino says, this is not your typical unhinged Hollywood coke party, and I am not your average 200-pound hermaphrodite. She's basically created all these freaks, and we're going on a joyride into oblivion tonight. So it's almost like Divino in this comic is like a cult leader. And these are all people who are in her cult who have given all their money to her. And I guess tonight they're going to do some like almost interdimensional sex ritual and pass into another dimension and leave this mortal coil. I like this line. Now, from the Bible, we know the prophets had terrible sex lives, and we're not going to make the same mistake. Kind of an interesting page, all the panels here. And basically, Divino tells Wildroot, she says, so I'm a little confused about the pronouns because Divine used to call himself he. So I guess I should call Divino he, since it's a parody of Divine. So he tells Wildroot that all my cocaine will be yours. And I'm also giving you my cocaine falcon. And so he says, Divino says, enjoy the party, until midnight when the big event's going to happen. Just all this random weird humor. He meets this guy who has a sow belly suit. So it looks like all of the teats from a pig were sewed onto a suit and hat. It's just so odd. And of course, his best friend's a pig and they're snorting coke together. We see more of this banter, very of its time. See, this art's pretty good. Rich Chidlaw's a decent cartoonist. Not my favorite, but definitely tight stuff. I mean, definitely great lettering. Like, this guy's probably was a graphic designer or something, I imagine. He's really sharp. And then there's this interlude where he goes into this weird corridor and he passes out and he wakes up and this almost like dominatrix has got him chained up to the wall. And basically he says like, oh, you forced me to escape this plane of reality by employing a technique perfected by the great sages of the East. And I guess the cocaine falcon somehow knows his new master's in trouble, and he grabs a bunch of cocaine and dumps it right onto Wildroot's face. And it almost makes Wildroot like turn into a superhero. He breaks out of his chains, brings the walls down like he's Samson. I'm pretty sure, I wouldn't be surprised at all if this is a direct swipe of Wally-Wood's Dynamo. That, like, when I saw this, I was like, this looks so familiar. And I'm pretty sure it's from those Thunder Agents comics. I mean, they would have been like a few years old at that point. Well, I guess probably 8 years old or so. But that's my theory, at least. So he breaks out of this little chamber. And then he goes into this room where there's a woman completely like in this latex suit. Almost like she's bound in it. She can't move. And then Wildroot takes advantage of her because she can't move. And then somebody announces it's midnight. The Grunion are running. Which I don't even know what Grunion are. I don't get that line. Are they some kind of fish or something? So I guess the big event's about to happen. And basically it's just this huge orgy. And Davino's servants are throwing pails of Grunion on everybody. Oh, they are fish. I'm very, like, hastily drawn fish, I guess. And this is where it gets really weird. So, okay, I guess they're reaching some kind of frenzied climax. And it looks like there's this, like, portal opening, like an interdimensional portal. And then Davino starts changing. She says, over the event horizon, towards the point of singularity, and out of the sphincter of the cosmos. And while she's saying that, Davino is turning into the Venus of Wallendorf, that famous statue from caveman times. This panel, this is like, I'm sorry, this 2-page spread, I should say. It's like, just makes me feel like I had a stroke. It's so like weird and dark compared to the rest of the art. I mean, this is normal, but just the way this, like the heavy inking on here, it almost does look like this is from another dimension. And then everyone blinks out. I guess they pass through the sphincter of the universe. All of Davino and her followers, his followers. But then Davino pops up on the wall for one last farewell, basically. And for some reason, Davino also says, oh, and this dog is yours too. The Whorehound is the name of that dog. So now he's got a dog and a cocaine falcon. And he heads back to Hollywood proper. And just more sight gags. And then the story ends basically where Wildroot's just like, seeing how shitty Hollywood is. Just all this, scumminess there. Especially back in the 70s. So he says to the dog, he says, maybe I'll just move into that crypt myself next to Marilyn Monroe. It'll be a nice place to stay. And just as a weird last gag, we see Lucille Ball scrubbing her own star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, saying, if you want anything done, do it right yourself. And just for good measure, she's farting. Like, it's just so dumb and odd, the humor. I mean, that's kind of a thing of a lot of these undergrounds, where they're kind of inexplicable, the humor. Sometimes they're just corny and goofy. But sometimes it's a combination of both, which to me is like the recipe of a great underground. Or at least the typical underground, So now we have another Wildroot story. Same art team. Godzilla versus the cocaine monster. And we see Wildroot having a dream. And he's, it looks like he's in ancient Japan. And he's about to do some coke. And this giant snout comes in and sucks it up. And then meanwhile, across the world, every time someone's about to do coke, this snout pokes its way in the window and snorts up all the coke. Of course, it's this cocaine monster. So we see this Japanese leader and a very unflattering caricature. And Wildroot says, hey, man, I got an idea. I could stop the cocaine monster. My friend happens to be the warden on Monster Island. So he calls up his friend, this guy. I love this guy. He's probably from a Toho movie that I just don't recognize him, but that's a great, funny design. And he says, yeah, sure. What monster you want? I got tons of monsters. They're coming out of my ass. We see the monsters in an exercise yard, so I guess it's a big prison, Monster Island. And then all of a sudden, Wildroot seems to have acquired this girlfriend, or at least a female companion. And he's like, okay, honey, let's get some coke and sit down and watch the action. Because his friend, the warden, sent Godzilla to fight the cocaine monster. And they have this big Donnybrook here. Some more of that very chunky inking. Just spilling a lot of ink on the page. And then it looks like Godzilla's about to step on our hero. And then he wakes up. And just the total stupid joke at the end is, that does it. No more bedtime sushi for me. God. You know, I do notice that this one says copyright Rich Chidlaw, solo. So maybe Rich Chidlaw wrote this and drew it. Another Wildroot story. And this one's called Shootout at the Hollywood Ranch Market. And I think this is another solo Rich Chidlaw piece. I like this opening panel. And this gay guy tries to pick him up. And I'm not going to tell you his reply. Because even though these hippie people were all supposed to be groovy and stuff, they were still homophobic and jerky. So once again, it's packed with all these random gags. So he goes in this like quickie mart, basically. And he's shopping for some stuff. Meanwhile, outside, we see this guy, and he's thinking in a thought bubble. He's like, oh, I hope Bad Bobby doesn't find me. But that's exactly what happens in the next panel. This is Bad Bobby. And he's all like, what have you done with my cocaine? I know you have my cocaine. And he's roughing up this kid. And meanwhile, back in the store, Wildroot's trying to shoplift. Some kid tries to rat him out. Lots of, banter and bad jokes. And as he runs outside, Bad Bobby's beating the shit out of this guy. He kind of bumps into him. He drops his grocery bag. And I guess Bad Bobby drops his bag of coke. And, of course, like in any good underground comic, the bags get switched. So later on, as Wildroot is almost home, we see Bad Bobby. He opens his bag, and there's just Captain Crunch in there and banana yogurt, because it's Wildroot's bag of groceries. And Wildroot finds all the cocaine. And, of course, he's thrilled. So it's a very happy ending for Wildroot until he has a coronary or a horrible addiction. So this is the other artist in this issue, Brent Boates. Man, I'm really impressed with Brent Boates. He's in a very few undergrounds. I think he also did stuff for like comic fanzines and stuff. But man, this guy's good. Look at this art. This guy's got the goods, man. This one's called Drawing from Life. And we see this guy who's kind of like the narrator, narrating the story. And he's an artist. And he's talking about how, he has this artist model. And for some reason, she's not doing well. She's not good at posing. She fidgets around too much. And then all of a sudden, the pizza delivery guy comes in. And he sees the model and says, oh, my God. And it turns out that it's this woman's husband. the model's husband is a pizza delivery guy. And he's like, oh, and he has a very thick Italian accent because, of course, everyone who delivers pizzas, an Italian stereotype. Says, that's what do you do in the afternoons while I'm working like a son of a bitch? See, I can laugh at that because I'm Italian. But he says, nobody makes a cuckold out of Cumbertone. And he pulls out a gun and he shoots his wife to death. And then he shoots himself. He's like, what have I done? I don't deserve to live. And then we see them both dead, slumped over each other. And the artist is just like, this is perfect. What perfect models. They don't fidget at all. And he's just sketching them calmly. Kind of a fun little story. Well, I don't know if fun's the word, but pretty interesting. And man, I love this Brent Boats art. Incredible stuff. Here we have another Rich Chidlaw, gag page, of course, about cocaine. And he also does the back cover. So let's get to number 2. Man, I really wish I had number 3 and number 4. So look at this crazy cover. I don't know. I looked this guy up on the internet, could not find him. Even Lambiek didn't have a thing on this guy. His name's Rogério. Rogério is a very popular name in Brazil, I found out from this research. So maybe he's a Brazilian guy. I don't know. But I couldn't find anything about him, which is a damn shame because look at this guy. This is like amazing psychedelic art. And all of his stuff is like this, where it's like, you got to look at everything twice sometimes just to be like, wait, what is that? Oh, I see. But it's all there. This guy's got chops, speaking of which. And love this logo too. Just a really nice cover all around. Great moments in the history of cocaine. And this is by that Rogério guy. It kind of continues from the cover. And yeah, sometimes I'm not even sure what I'm looking at. Look at this panel, guys. If you can I don't know if you can zoom in. You probably can't. This is crazy. It looks like Sergio Aragonés did like 10 lines of coke and decided to draw a comic, a little cartoon. It's just insane amount of just nuttiness going on there. And to be honest, I don't even understand this comic. What's going on? We see these, I guess these guys are from olden times, and they're chopping up this giant mound of cocaine with swords and snorting it. And I guess from them chopping up the cocaine on this stone disc, it looks like it turns into one of those like ancient astrological charts, whatever those are called. You know what I mean? Like the stone disc the Aztecs had that were calendars. So I think that's what it means, but who knows? I don't really care. The art's amazing. Now we have Night of the Nearly Dead, another Wild Root story by DiCaprio and Chidlaw. Little Rod Serling homage there. He narrates the story. And we meet this guy, this vampire. And I'll get to his name in a second because it's a pretty clever pun, but I forgot what it is. And he's got this assistant, Mandingo. Oh, it says co-inked by Warren Greenwood. Yeah, you can tell the art looks different than the other Rich Chidlaw. It looks just more like kind of typical cartoony. And so Wildroot comes to this vampire's house. I think he's delivering something. And it's a really weird reference here. If you're my age, Rula Lenska. She was like one of those celebrities that nobody really knew what she did, but she was a celebrity. She'd always be on The Tonight Show. But I don't remember ever seeing a movie with Rula Lenska or hearing a song sung by her. I don't know where her celebrity came from. But you can totally date someone if they know, not date them, like take them out on a date. You can know how old they are. If they know who Rula Lenska is, they're definitely over 50. And so basically the vampire says, hey, you want to make some money? I got a job for you. That night, the Count throws a little party, and we see all kinds of weirdos at his party. Man, this art looks way different with the Greenwood inks. I didn't even notice that when I was reading it first, but this is, you'd never even guess this is Rich Chidlaw. Oh yeah, I'm sorry, the vampire's name is Count Nostrolachu. It's such a dumb pun. I thought it was funny. And of course, it gives DiCaprio a chance to have all this banter. People talking about whatever people talk about at parties like this. And then Wildroot, I guess, is there for a presentation. I think this is what the Count wanted him to do. And he's showing off this new invention, the Basomatic. And I guess the deal is, I didn't quite understand this. Supposedly it's going to process the cocaine. So he says, everyone, give me your cocaine. We'll throw it in here and convert those crystals into precious particles of faith. So everyone's all like, yeah, okay, take my coke. Yeah, pour it in. But we see that Nostrolachu is under it, taking all the coke. So when the machine goes into operation, just this little nugget of cocaine comes out. And everyone jumps on it. And apparently it's amazing wonder coke, you know? So I don't quite get this whole cocaine thing. And, of course, Count Nostrolachu is absconding with all the goodies in the cement truck. The goodies being the cocaine that he swindled out of everyone. And then I also don't get this at all. His assistant brings this thing, Manite? 99% pure. I don't know if that's some kind of drug or, I don't know. And the Count says, keep back, you'll ruin everything. And then he falls into his own truck full of cocaine. And I guess Mandingo is not, basically, he was secretly plotting against the Count. But then the Count is, from within the cement truck, is basically just gloating, saying, like, foolish mortals, sweet eternity entombed in my own cocaine geode. And then it says, sure hope that Manite doesn't give me the runs. So I don't understand what Manite is. I guess I should look that up, but I doubt it's important. I have a feeling this is pretty just nonsense. So here we have Warren Greenwood's solo comic, Space Dog on the Ice World. And this is like a fun, furry sci-fi story. When you look at the main character, it's like, this guy, not so great, right? But guys, you got to look at all the background characters are so amazing, so imaginative. The character designs on them, they're amazing. Like I want comics about all these guys. Even Frosty the Snowman is in outer space. So Space Dog ends up on this ice world planet. He's kind of hooking up with this cat lady. Her name is Neko. And then this guy shows up. And I guess he gives Space Dog some drugs. But it's not cocaine. It's like something that puts you to sleep. So they grab Neko. I guess they're going to sell her at the slave market. These two bad guys. Man, something about this art, like, like all the main character just looks kind of silly to me, like, but all the backgrounds are so great. Really precise and then just really imaginative. So Space Dog wakes up. He confronts the two kidnappers, and he kills them both. And I guess there's a happy ending, because we see Space Dog taking Neko from behind. So all's well that ends well. And it looks like they're staying at Doctor Strange's place in Greenwich Village, those windows. don't know why. I totally just love this art. Even though I don't love a big part of it, but some of it is just like really appealing to me. Here we have a Dennis Ellefson story. I've seen that guy around in some undergrounds. I can't remember if he ever did anything, anything memorable. And this one, we see this guy go over to his friend's house, his lady friend, and he says, "Hey, I got some cocaine. Have you ever tried it?" And she's all like, "No, I've just smoked grass. I've always wanted to do cocaine. Thank you." And she does coke. She seems thrilled by it. And it makes her horny. And she jumps on his bones. And they have really hot sex. And I guess the joke at the end is after he leaves, she reveals that, like, "Oh, yeah, I like making that guy feel like a big man. Of course, I've done coke before." So, kind of I don't know. Not so great. Not a really big fan of his art. It's a little sloppy. And not in a good way. Here we get another Warren Greenwood story. But this is also him collaborating with Pete Von Shawley. He was the guy who did that Neuro Comics, that Timothy Leary comic we looked at a few months back. This is from an idea by Pal Jensen. And this is a very goofy little story, but well drawn. Pretty nice stuff. And just a silly concept where they're like, "Oh, we got this little bit of cocaine, but I've invented this shrinking ray. So it'll shrink us down, and then we'll have a mountain of cocaine, basically, in comparison to our noses." And then the shock ending, which I please do not reveal, is the janitor has come into the laboratory and seen a little bit of coke and snorted it. And he snorts up our two protagonists. Once again, it's a great panel. Them getting sucked up through a coke straw. Oh, guys, this is beautiful. Robert Williams, nothing to do with cocaine, but I guess Robert Williams' drug of choice is ass. And this is all about the science and the beauty and splendor of women's asses. It's called Professor Brownfinger in Posterior Plus. And here's the professor. And it's almost like trying to be like one of those educational comics from like Dell. But of course it's not. I mean, there's actually some real science in here. It shows you the actual muscles of the gluteus maximus and why women's butts are different than men's, due to evolution and the skeletal structure. I love the story of this woman here. But I've heard Robert Williams say this before in interviews, where he says, of all the things ever seen, the sunset on another planet, the beautiful rings of Saturn, the birth of a new star, in the whole universe, there's nothing as beautiful as a woman's ass. I actually agree with that sometimes. Like just not a woman's ass, just a beautiful woman. I'd rather look at that than the Grand Canyon. It's just a phenomenally great thing. Aesthetically. Apparently this was available as a poster. I would love to see this poster. In a giant size, I should look that up on the internet. God, just beautiful stuff. And the whole comic, of course, is in the shape of a woman's ass. Probably the only comics page ever shaped as a woman's ass. Funny stuff, interesting stuff, and it's Robert Williams, so here it's fucking gorgeous. So here we have 3 one-pagers, all written by Bruce Sweeney, but drawn by different artists. And they're not very good. The first one, though, is drawn by Valentino of Shadowhawk fame. Well, actually, I mean, he did a lot. Normal Man. But probably the majority of people know him as the founder of Image. And so here we see all these underground stars. We see Phoebe Phoebe and the Pigeon People. We see Valentino, who like would draw himself in comics, so he almost was like an underground comics character. And we see a poker game going on between Dr. Atomic, Trash Man, God Knows, Rosie the Riveter, Trina Robbins' character, and Pat the Cat from Nard and Pat. And just a bunch of silly gags and stuff. Next one is called Sunday Morning Last Line Blues. This is drawn by Basil Hat and Raldo. And just a goofy gag. Looks like something that could be in Crazy Magazine or Cracked. Or Sick. And here's another underground homage, Puss in Toots. And this one's drawn by Gary Whitney. And we see, look, it's Harold Head and Fat Freddy. But Gary Whitney draws Fat Freddy almost looking like a Family Guy character or Garfield. It's like weird. He doesn't quite get the Gilbert Shelton style. And this one, just another dumb gag. Pretty stupid. This next one's called The Spawn of Koktholku. We see it's the past, an Illuminati meeting. This guy has invented a time machine. And I'm sorry, guys, I forgot to mention. Story by Chris Statler, art by Pal Jensen. Pal, I don't know how to say that name. Pretty well drawn. This guy's pretty good artist. But it's just like so many undergrounds, so many things are just like, what the fuck? So this guy's got this miniature time machine. I don't know why he'd want one. I guess it's a prototype, but still. And for his friend says, oh, let me just put this cocaine on the machine. And no reason why. Of course, when the machine is sent into the future, their bag of cocaine's on it. So everyone's bummed out. They're like, oh, that was our whole stash. Meanwhile, we flash forward to the present. And we see this dude who has moved to Europe to sell dope to rich rock stars and start a heavy metal band with William S. Burroughs. That's very odd. And he's like, man, I wish I had some dope. And all of a sudden that time machine pops up with a bag of coke on it. And he snorts it. And all of a sudden, look, we see his eye turns into a crazy clock. And then all of a sudden, it's like he's hallucinating. He's like, that must have been ketamine. And we see all of these famous drug users through history, but even literature. We see Sherlock Holmes there, Freud. We see the Rolling Stones. We see Richard Pryor on fire. That had happened. His freebase incident had happened already, I guess. And Linda Ronstadt, I think this is. We see Hitler. And then Hunter Thompson shows up with his buddy, his lawyer. And this is just an excuse for him to just have all these characters saying dumb gags, dumb jokes, you know. And then for some reason, there's this boxer here. I don't know. I assume there was a famous boxer with a drug problem. But then for some reason, Conan's there. Which, I don't know. Is this a reference to Robert E. Howard being a drug user? Which I've never heard of. I don't know. But it's the very old school Barry Smith Conan with the horned helmet. Hugh Hefner shows up. And then he is kind of freaking out. So he's like, oh man, I gotta be collect my thoughts. So he goes in the next room and he sees that guy who invented the time machine. It's some kind of time vortex, a negative time vortex. So the words are backwards because it's a negative vortex. So he shuts the door. He's just like, yeah, what the hell was that? And then just more gags, more weird characters. If there was a good joke here, I'd tell you guys. But they're really just like, I don't know, just kind of dumb. So basically our protagonist sits everyone down. Oh, I'm sorry, it's not the protagonist. It's one of the people at this gathering. He says, I believe this is a device to be a time machine, and in conjunction with the drug, it created a cocaine gestalt or Jungian collective high. And basically they say, everyone here, did you just do cocaine before you ended up in this room with us? And they're like, yeah, I was just doing a line of coke. So somehow there's this magic coke, and it's created this time warp vortex. And then the inventor of the time machine comes out of this apartment, and he says, oh my God, the stash is gone. Oh, I guess he's coming from the past, trying to get his stash back. But he's like, the stash is gone. The universe is doomed. Okay, this woman's about to give him head, and she says, I always wanted to go down in history. That's kind of semi-clever, I guess. So this guy from the past is like, trying to explain it to him. We must find my stash. And they realize that Linda Ronstadt is snorting the coke. They're like, stop! With the time vortex, you'll interfere with the evolutionary process of all of mankind. But she snorts it before he can get to her. And he says, now you've done it. You've unleashed the doom that came to snort us. The spawn of Coke-Thulhu. I love this crazy design. He's got marijuana plant leaves for feet. Look at his hands. That looks wicked. These hypos. Razor blades. He's got all these appendages for snorting coke. That is a cool looking image. Kind of fun story. I just wish the jokes were funnier. Now we have Rogério again. The cover artist, Great Moments in Cocaine History, The Nose Circus. And this is another one. I have no idea what's really happening in these pictures. It's almost like some of Robert Williams' really dense black and white stuff, where it's like, it looks great, and it's good art, but it's almost just like too detailed. So we basically see these like high wire artists, and everyone's a nose in this comic. And I guess this guy's going to jump off of from 100 feet into this pile. A tiny coke mirror. A small mirror of cocaine. And it looks like, he does it. He does all these backflips. God, look at all these stars drawn here. And he lands in the plate, and it just, I don't know, it disappears. I don't know what's going on. But I like how the crowd are all these noses. Man, this guy's amazing to me. I know technically you'd say, if you can't tell what's going on, that's not a good artist. But no, that's not true. Especially if you were on drugs. This would be really good. This belongs in Zap or something, And then we have a Rich Chidlaw back cover. And actually, let me double check on that. Did he do this back cover? I think he did. Yep, he does. And it's Wild Root again. Another goofy, jokey thing. The Cocaine Pyramid. So there you go, guys. Cocaine Comics, number 1 and number 2. Pretty damn good underground comics, I must say. And, man, if anyone feels like sending me number 3 and number 4, I'll reimburse you. I just never even seen them. I've never even seen them in a back issue bin at any price. So I don't know if they're really rare or something, but I would love to have them. I'd love to complete this collection. But yeah, sorry, just didn't. I got distracted by how great both of these covers are. So hope you guys enjoyed looking at this today, and I hope to see you next time here at the Herculespetix Academy of Comic Book Studies.